Now, as part of our Elections Matter series, today we look at the significant milestone that South Africa marks this year, 30 years of democracy. In particular, we look at the role of the Independent Electoral Commission over the past 30 years. We're joined by the IEC's chairperson, Mr. Mosotho Moepya. Good evening, Mr. Mosotho, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Kundo, and good to have you, for you to have us here.
No, it's a pleasure to have you with us. I want us to start with perhaps the role or contribution of the IEC insofar as it relates to the consolidation of our electoral democracy, because you have been the envy of electoral commissions across the continent for the longest time, ever since actually every single election has been declared free and fair. Just talk us through your role in contributing to this consolidation of electoral democracy.
Well, there's been a great amount of pain and hardship, but a lot of joy in that journey. You will recall that in our early days, 1994, and even 1998, 1999, those years when the Electoral Commission was established in the manner that it exists today, there were many people who had not conducted an election that were brought to the team at the Electoral Commission. And we had to learn and learn very fast. These were not things we were taught at university. We had to learn on the job and learn very fast. But since those years, our democracy, as you know, it's young. 30 years in a democracy, it's a very short period. But our democracy compares well with mature democracies around the world. We've had to learn good election management practices. We've had to apply the laws that Parliament had given us at that point. We had to improve on those pieces of legislation, given the experiences we've had here at home and elsewhere in the world. One of the things that happened to us early on was that we were willing to go and work and help in other countries in all elections, and that part of our work really helped a great deal in strengthening our democracy back home. I remember people working in the Comoros, for example, in Botswana, in the DRC, and many other countries. The experiences that we gathered from there were handy for the work that we do at home. We learned from the problems that existed elsewhere, which we could tell it's a matter of time. If we did nothing about them, they would happen here at home. Mm-hmm. And so we strengthened our processes. Give you an example. In 2007, when there were problems in Kenya, in terms of results and how the results were transmitted, we learned a very good lesson. Mm-hmm. We thought in South Africa, we must scan the results and publish them on our website so that anyone, anywhere in the world can see that this result that was signed off at the voting station is actually the result that we've captured in our result system. Mm-hmm. And that brought us a lot of credibility. But this we have done in many areas of the work that we do to strengthen the transparency of the elections, their credibility. We've taken measures to remove manual processes and look at automating a lot of our processes.
And that comes with its own challenges, a lot of technical glitches.
Yes, but it brings a great amount of certainty, of accuracy, and of speed, which is what you need in an election. And so those are the kind of things that we have done over 30 years. And there are many. We've opened access to voters. In 1994, for example, we only had 10,000 voting stations in the country. We now have just under 24,000 voting stations across the country, and many of them are streamed. In 1994, one of the signature things that we know about that election was that the queues were very long, snaking queues everywhere. When we have queues, snaking queues now, we worry because we need to have a process that is very quick to follow We don't want to keep voters for a long time. As a matter of fact, we look at the amount of time that voters take at a voting station, and we always seek to reduce that amount of time. That's work that has happened in a process of 30 years.
Quite impressive. You know, when you detail these challenges, one then looks at where you are now. And a number of experts are saying that the upcoming polls are probably as consequential as the 1994, meaning there's a mammoth task ahead for you. Do you share those sentiments?
Well, I must say it's a yes or no question. It's largely yes, of course, because in these elections, we have the greatest amount of contestants. We have the introduction of independent candidates in an election, which is a first. We have the largest amount of registered voters. But it's a no because every one of the elections requires that we follow the law that is prescribed for an election and conduct that election in terms of that law. The laws have not changed significantly, other than the insertion of candidates in parts of those elections. There have been improvements that we have caused. What has changed in this election significantly are the expectations. The expectations, South African voters are celebrating 30 years. They are saying we are impatient about this, or we want to see this. And that pressure, everyone is feeling it. Remember that when the pressure is put on the political climate, somehow, although we are not a political institution, we are drawn in with a political institution.
And there seems to be quite a lot of pressure. But another interesting one, granted we are a litigious nation.
Yes.
I'd just like to pick your brain if you haven't seen perhaps an increase in the litigation, because this vibrant democracy of ours allows for some to litigate against the IEC, even in the middle of your timetable, as we've seen right now. But have you seen an increase in this?
Absolutely. We have not been to an election with the amount of litigation so close to an election. As I speak to you, we still have matters going to the courts concerning participation in this election or non-participation in these elections. You would know that there are two matters. In fact, there are two matters that we have taken to higher courts. We have lost in the electoral court and thought, you know what, we need to understand clearly. We think there is something that we don't agree with. Out of respect, the courts we cannot complain about. But when the outcome of a court proceeding is not something that you agree with, with the greatest respect, there are processes that you follow, and that's what we are following.
And this relates to section, pardon me for interjecting, this relates to section 47(1)(e) of the Constitution, which talks to your powers. And the interesting, it's one of them, and the interesting aspect or part of this is that you were at pains as the IEC to come out and state to the public that this is not a personal matter, but one that has far-reaching consequences beyond your tenure even.
Correct. And not just our tenure, for these very elections that we are conducting, the expression free and fair, it's an expression we take for granted, but this is an expression used even in our Constitution and in our law. It means, in simple terms, that in an election, we must ensure that no one participates when they are not supposed to participate, or no one is excluded when they are meant to be included. If we don't do that, the outcome of an election cannot.
But I'm sure you know the position of the MK party, saying that you exceeded your bounds in this one, that you didn't have the powers. Perhaps this particular matter rested with Parliament.
With the greatest respect, we disagree with them. That's why we have taken the matter to a higher court. This application of section 47(1)(e), it's not a novel thing. It has happened before. And in the instances where it has happened, the application is exactly the same as what we have applied now. So why has it changed today? That's really what we are keen to understand. It's not about the MK party. It's not about former President Zuma. We have dealt with the issue that the Electoral Court said we should deal with. What we are asking the Constitutional Court is to help us appreciate and understand the difference on this occasion. And that's important for now and for the future.
I still ask, how difficult has it been in consulting with your legal representatives on this particular matter? Because you didn't have the judgment. You had the orders, and you had to navigate around some of these issues where even us as journalists were wondering what probably informed your appeal now. Are you perhaps appealing that specific section? Is it perhaps the sentence itself? How difficult was that process?
It wasn't too difficult, but we needed to be sure that we understand what the possibilities are and what the court might have been minded to do. We don't know because we don't have reasons. We still don't have reasons. But it is important. The issues that were before the courts are not abstract issues. They are points of law that we don't have disagreement with. What we don't have agreement on is the interpretation of those issues. And that's what we want clarified once and for all.
And then the other matter relates to the specific one that the DA had brought before the Electoral Court. They wanted more voting stations abroad. You have since appealed that one. Talk us through the reasons you opted to appeal.
You see, when you say a consular, you mean an institution of government that is governed by international law that relates to embassies, consulates, and foreign missions. But when you talk about an honorary consular, you're talking a private individual, a person who 9 out of 10 may not even be a citizen of the country in which that election is going to take place. Many of the people that are honorary consulars are private persons. They don't have an office. They work maybe from home. They may rent an office somewhere. In this country, an election must be secured. It must be given meaning by ensuring that not only do we vote, but that vote is secured and is counted in the manner that will give confidence to voters. We cannot give that undertaking. We don't know the people that are honorary consulates. In this particular case, one of the persons who is in that position indicated that they simply don't have the infrastructure to do it in that manner. Now, we can't rely for such a fundamental right on persons we don't know, we have no control over. They're not in our country, they're not bound by our laws, and that is a difficulty. Even when we wanted to give effect to this, there were problems with giving effect to such an order. And you then say, can we indeed have people outside of the country, one saying, I'm in this point of that country, the other saying, I'm in that point of that country, everywhere. We will not simply be allowed to do it in foreign countries. We will have to rely on the mercy of the country, on the mercy of individuals, things that we don't do in this country or where we have missions. And that really is the difficulty we have.
And then just in closing, all the parties signed the Electoral Code of Conduct. How many reports or at least incidents have you received relating to political intolerance? Because we know the NFP has actually committed to bring a case to you related to the IFP.
Yes, I haven't seen the NFP matter. Things happen. I might be sitting with you here and things are filed with us. But every one of the things that are filed, we deal with. In terms of the complaints that have been before us, I think there have been about 3 or so of them. Which we are looking at. One we are close to finalizing. One we received yesterday, I think, and so we'll deal with them. I have read or heard about the one you're mentioning?
Yes, of the helicopter that was flying over the stadium.
Yes, I've heard that we are going to receive it, but I have not seen it. Today I haven't seen it. It may have come today. It may still be on its way. When it comes, we will deal with it appropriately.
But broadly speaking, in comparison to years past, are you seeing less of these incidents of political intolerance or more?
No. In fact, and that is a good thing about these elections. We are 35 days away from an election. We have not had dramatic incidents and calls and things. And I must congratulate political parties, their candidates and their supporters. I trust that they will continue to comply with the code of conduct. We haven't heard of incidents that are major, that are worrying, that are forcing us to take drastic measures generally. And so we've got to say, South Africa, you're doing well, continue to do well.
Quite heartening. Thank you very much, Mr. Mosotho, for joining us. That's IEC chairperson Mosotho Moepya.